Good morning. Thanks for the introductions. Since we decided to make a paper about memes, so we felt that it's only appropriate that we make a meme ourselves. So that's the process. So yeah. So in fact, tracing our own story when we were writing this paper. So when we started off, this is what it was. When we submitted a synopsis, we felt, this is what the story that we'll go with. By the time we got to the main paper, Coldplay happened. The floodgates opened. Everything happened. So now the question that we kind of asked ourselves is it just comic relief? Kind of offering us an escape from our routine, or can memes be integrated in our own work routine as market researchers? So that's the question we kind of pursued with. So why can memes add value therefore? So we have our focus groups, we have our surveys, everything is going good. So why should we even look at memes? One, it's practically free. Not for clients, of course, it's practically free. You can get the data out. It's of course it takes less time. In our industry, we understand the value of time and money. In some cases, time is equals to money. But given the fact that it kind of offers us something that can save us time and time, so it kind of improves the bottom line. So therefore, the business perspective is closed. But purely as a researcher, what can memes offer us? Often researchers, we crave for the spontaneous, unhindered kind of insights peek into the minds of consumers. To me, memes offer us this emotionally charged insights, consumer created ones, crowd wisdom in that sense, and access to that. So an access to the consumer psyche, unhindered, not conditioned by a survey or a DG or anything of that sort. So that perhaps is the value. And if we have to go about, is there any framework? As it happens, there is a framework currently. So there is this lady called Limo Schiffman. She in fact has come up with this threefold framework called form, content, and stance. Form and content are in a way direct measures. They talk about structure. The physical manifestation is form. The content is talking about the message. Whereas the stance kind of talks about the emotional posturing, whether it is anger, whether it is attitude and all of that. But we as market researchers, what more we can get from it, and what is the kind of value we can derive from it. So that gave us to kind of think a bit deeper, and look at semantic inference, which talks about the language and the deeper meaning that resides with it, and also more importantly, any communication has an intended receiver. So we wanted to look at the consumer archetype or whom it is speaking to. This is the fivefold framework we went ahead with towards dissecting the memes. We've carefully curated a set of few memes, we thought we will share with you. The first one goes like this, how is Rishi Sunak an Indian, but I am from Mumbai and I cannot claim, because I stay in Thane. This kind of calls out the kind of hypocrisy or double standards in identity politics in that sense. It calls about flexible inclusivity for somebody who is a celebrity who is called an Indian, whereas somebody who lives in the same city, perhaps in a different geography, doesn't call it. Especially we are living in a expanded city. Every city is expanding, and so we call this archetype the constant immigrant, because he is often living on the edge, navigating in his identity culturally, socially, things like that. See, the other one is about physical transformation, as a cost-saving consequence. All of us know how urban commute is a challenging one. It kind of results in these challenges. But what it kind of gives us deeper, which we called as an urban acrobat, this talks about a consumer who navigates and transcends cost, comfort, and class in the same manner when her commute gets transformed. From a Ola to a local train, her aspiration is met, her upper mobility is ensured, and all of that. Similarly, this is something which we all have been exposed to. Instagram depresses you in the 20s, LinkedIn, in your 30s. It talks about the show-off culture, the constant need for posturing, the constant need to look good, feel good, be successful, and all of that. So we call this an optical antagonist, who is kind of fed up with this constant show-off that is happening. So this is, all of us are familiar with it. We are all connected, we are all wired, and we know what happens to our lives when we are being dissociated from it. We talk this archetype as untethered screen link, with whom the digital connectivity is an extension of self, without which we go into an existential kind of a crisis. We don't know who we are any longer. This is about relationship voids. We keep on hearing about people talking to ChatGPT. We keep on hearing about people seeking, mental counseling and all of that through online platforms, etc. We call this an emoji whisperer who finds delight in the notifications she gets. And it also gives you a smart thing about how brands can actually communicate and get personalized messages going, and which kind of gives you a deeper meaning, filling the relationship void that otherwise happens in, your physical life. The final, this one is a smart one where you, have Messi and Mbappe dressed in mundu and having katam chaya in a Kerala tea shop, It talks, we call this archetype a global patriot, He is a culturally rooted guy, but he kind of has global icons. He is a fan of global icons, but he tries to kind of Indianize it. He kind of talks also about how we as a society, we try and look the world through the tinted glass of how being an Indian, and that's how do we do it, right? We Indianize everything. This is what it is. So what therefore memes offer us? Clearly it gives us a insight into the society that we live on. So clearly one really cannot dismiss memes as just a joke or a comic relief. It gives us clearly snippets of the things that are happening around, and an artifact of anthropological significance for us. Structurally, it kind of exaggerates the mundane. Your commute, what happens with life, etc. It kind of exaggerates the mundane. Also, kind of repurposes mainstream media. It could be films, it could be actors, it could be anybody. It kind of repurposes it, and also kind of gives us the collective sense of the kind of challenges that we go through as a society. Like generational gaps, societal anxieties, even identity struggles, for those who are mainstream and who are not part of the mainstream. And importantly, it gives us archetypes which perhaps in your typical studies you may not get through. Somebody who is living in the digital ecosystem, gives us those identities that we can explore as a researcher. Finally, humor. Humor seems to be an important processing lens or processing tool to kind of go through all those challenges that we go through. To know more about humor, so humor as a prism of expression, because we are all familiar with Navarasas, we know that there are 9 things that are there, but humor itself kind of through these memes comes across as a spectrum, right from dark to witty to self-deprecating to playful to absurd. So what are the key things that we could see as humor? So it's through memes, what one could see is that memes, it is the preferred coping mechanism. It is rooted in irreverence. In fact, these guys, the meme creators, those who share those memes, etc., it is rooted in irreverence. They kind of spar with everyone. I don't think they hold anybody in the higher pedestal who is immune to being a subject of a meme. And also it presents a nice middle class kind of a vantage point, the kind of struggles, what they go through, things about life, and the struggle we as a society also go through, which comes in the way of unmet aspirations, because we as a society are hugely aspirational. Somewhere these memes also kind of reflect, what is being met and what is not being met, and that's kind of coming through. So what are other areas we just started off? So what are other areas we could explore as researchers? We could look at on a particular topic, on a particular area, how the sentiments evolve over time. We could look at geocultural segmentation beyond what is right there at this point of time. Probably what unites a Delhi vis-a-vis Mumbai, vis-a-vis Chennai or a Hyderabad, things like that. Stance shift, how the emotional posturing changes over time from brands and anybody. And to me personally, what is exciting is the whole archetype mapping. Meme personas, which could probably give us something new for us to kind of look at, new consumer cohorts to look at. So some areas that we could look at, pre-test campaign themes. Like ensuring the cultural relevance in campaigns, even before you go to the consumer. So, memes could give you a reality check. In fact, we could look before you leap, in terms of understanding it. The obvious one is the second one, which is the consumer pain point, identifying areas for us to improve in terms of product and services, and also being an icebreaker in surveys and focus groups where meme references could help us. So, with that, we wanted to say that, कुछ भी हो जाए, these consumers today, वो दिल पे नहीं लेते, meme पे लेते. And just one more point to sign off. All this is not new. Okay, now 2000-year-old, I think 1500 years ago, Saint Thiruvalluvar, who is being quoted more often, he used his couplets to kind of convey life, the tenets of wisdom through couplets, which is probably the original version of meme. And 60 years ago, I think even continuing successfully, the Amul billboards, which all of us are familiar with, is obviously a version of a meme. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
We'll move to the Q&A. Thank you so much. That was a really interesting paper. So there are a few questions here. The first one is, the examples you gave in your paper really pointed out good memes that show us the cultural movements. But what about the large proportion of memes that are just noise?
Sorry.
A large proportion of memes, that's just noise.
So the cultural depth that you have pointed out versus a large number of memes that exist out there which are just noise. How do you pick, how do you differentiate in your work?
They indeed are. I mean, to be very honest, we handpicked these memes because these were exciting, and to us intuitively these problems made sense, because all of these problems which were depicted in those memes were spoken about, written about, I think part of this entire meme subculture, including stand-up comedies, etc. So they resonated strongly. Personally, I think we did a far more qualitative approach to it. So we picked those memes that resonated more with us. I think we would have analyzed at least 50 or 60 odd memes, but these things resonated more with us, and therefore we kind of took them forward to analyze.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, some memes work across cultures and languages while many others are very localized. From a research perspective, how do we analyze the impact, and will the clients be willing to factor these in?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In fact, we were also debating that. Certainly, I think, personally, I think I would be excited to see which of those memes actually cut across cultures, because like we saw the ones with global icons. It's a global icon, but we know that he is out of place in that particular meme. So therefore, I'm sure certain memes definitely have the quality and the thing to kind of cut across, cultures, subcultures, everything, I'm sure.
Thanks. There's one more that I'll pick up. So you're talking about memes, and you've done a great job in selecting them and analyzing them and pointing out all the cultural shifts, archetypes, etc. But do you think there's a threat of losing the richness of expression through language? That, as you rightly pointed out in your first slide, that we depend on a lot for insights. Do you think there's a threat to that?
Not at all. I think it is all part of evolution, right? Probably perhaps how we spoke 100 years ago, 200 years ago is not the same language, same lexicon that we use today. Perhaps it is the sign of evolution. I think we should just embrace it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.